We're just days away from reaching 1,000 subscribers. If we hit this goal in the next 15 days, we'll be able to keep the channel running and continue bringing you these stories. Your subscription makes all the difference. It's quick and helps us enormously. The Secret Beneath the Sleeve. Chapter 1. The Accusation. The Grand Salon of Belmont Castle gleamed with 1,000 lights on this October evening in 1847, its crystal chandeliers casting golden reflections on the evening-dressed guests who crowded together for Count Maximilian de Beaumont's annual ball. The region's elite had gathered for this much-anticipated social occasion. Dukes, counts, bankers and wealthy industrialists moved with elegance between the marble columns, their conversations punctuated by crystalline laughter and the delicate chiming of champagne glasses. At the center of this refined assembly, Count Maximilian, a 45-year-old man of proud bearing and impeccable manners, received compliments from his guests on the magnificence of his residence. Widowed for 3 years, he was one of France's most coveted bachelors, and several ambitious mothers were discreetly pushing their daughters in his direction, hoping to attract his attention. Among the servants who bustled silently in service of the guests, a young woman stood out for her natural grace despite her modest condition. Céleste Moreau, aged 22, had been a lady's maid at the castle for 4 years. Her chestnut hair was carefully arranged under her white cap, and her hazel eyes reflected a keen intelligence that her social position obliged her to conceal. An orphan taken in by charity, she performed her duties with silent devotion, invisible to the eyes of most nobles who encountered her daily. That evening, Céleste was serving refreshments with her usual efficiency, ensuring that glasses never remained empty and that platters of delicate treats circulated smoothly. She knew perfectly the habits of each guest, their preferences and peculiarities, the fruit of long years of attentive observation. It was then that an incident came to disturb the evening's harmony. Viscount Henri de Montclair, an arrogant man in his 30s, known for his excesses and volatile temperament, had just discovered the disappearance of his gold pocket watch, a valuable family heirloom adorned with diamonds and engraved with his family's coat of arms. "My watch!" he exclaimed in a loud voice that abruptly interrupted the surrounding conversations. "My family watch has disappeared. Someone has stolen it from me!" An embarrassed silence fell over the salon. The guests exchanged worried glances, unaccustomed to this sort of incident in their closed circle. Count Maximilian approached immediately, concerned about managing this delicate situation that risked tarnishing his reception's reputation. "Come now, Henri," he said in a soothing tone. "You may have simply misplaced your watch. These things happen." "Misplaced?" roared the Viscount, his face reddening with anger. "Impossible! I had it barely an hour ago. I remember perfectly. Someone has robbed me." His gaze swept the assembly before fixing on the servants who continued their service while trying to make themselves forgotten. It must be one of these servants. Who else would have the audacity to steal from a guest? The Count frowned, visibly annoyed by these public accusations. "Henri, I beg you, moderate your words. My staff is of irreproachable honesty." "Your staff?" sneered the Viscount. "My dear Maximilian, you are too trusting. These people take advantage of our benevolence to rob us. Everyone must be searched." Murmurs and indignant exclamations arose among the guests. Some approved the Viscount's suspicions. Others seemed shocked by the turn events were taking. The festive atmosphere had given way to palpable tension. It was at this moment that the Viscount's accusing gaze fell on Céleste, who stood near a console with an empty tray in her hands. "That one," he said, pointing a vengeful finger toward her. "That girl was near me when I noticed the disappearance. She's the thief." All eyes turned to Céleste, who paled under the accusation. "My Lord Viscount," she stammered, "I assure you I have taken nothing. I only served refreshments." "Lies!" barked Henri de Montclair, advancing toward her with a menacing step. "You took advantage of your position to steal from me. Confess your crime." Count Maximilian interposed himself, uncomfortable. "Henri, we must proceed with measure. We need proof before accusing." "Proof?" The Viscount was now scarlet with rage. "She has certainly hidden it on her person. She must be searched." "I beg you, my lord," pleaded Celeste, tears in her eyes. "I am innocent. I have never stolen anything in my life." But the Viscount was no longer listening. Blinded by his anger and arrogance, he rushed toward the young woman and, before anyone could stop him, violently seized the sleeve of her servant's dress. The fabric, already worn by years of service, tore under the violence of the gesture, revealing Celeste's forearm. A deathly silence fell over the assembly. What everyone discovered created a shock wave that swept through the salon like a tidal wave. On Celeste's forearm, now exposed to all gazes, stood out with clarity a delicate but recognizable tattoo. The coat of arms of the royal Bourbon family, surrounded by a crown and a Latin motto. This was not a simple tattoo. It was a mark of royal birth, a distinctive sign that only members of the royal family or their direct legitimate descendants bore. A mark that had disappeared from France with the fall of the monarchy and which everyone believed extinguished forever. The Viscount stepped back, mouth agape, his hand still extended toward Celeste, who was desperately trying to cover her exposed arm. The guests exchanged astounded looks, not yet fully understanding the scope of what they had just seen. It was the old Duke of Saintonge, present that evening, who first broke the silence. A former servant of the court of Versailles before the Revolution, he was one of the few who could authenticate what he saw. His trembling voice resonated in the frozen salon. "My God, that mark. I saw it at the Palace of Versailles more than 50 years ago. It is the mark of the Bourbons. This young woman is of royal blood." The effect of this revelation was immediate. Some guests fell to their knees by reflex. Others stepped back with respect, all suddenly understanding that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. The simple servant they had ignored for years was actually a descendant of the royal family of France. Celeste herself seemed petrified by what had just occurred. The secret she had kept all her life, which her adoptive mother had made her swear never to reveal, had just been exposed before the French elite in the most dramatic circumstances. Count Maximilian, in shock, approached her with respectful reverence. "Miss, your Highness, forgive us our ignorance. If we had known—" "No," murmured Celeste, finally finding her voice. "You were not supposed to know. No one was supposed to know. My life depended on it." And thus a simple theft accusation revealed one of France's best-kept secrets, forever transforming the destiny of a servant and overturning the established order of a society that thought it knew all its mysteries. Chapter 2. The Weight of a Secret. In the hours following the stunning revelation, Belmont Castle became the theatre of an unprecedented upheaval. The ball guests, still shocked by what they had discovered, gathered in small groups, exchanging incredulous murmurs and furtive glances towards Celeste, who had been escorted to the Count's private apartments. Viscount Henri de Montclair, inadvertently responsible for this extraordinary revelation, had become livid. His pocket watch had finally been found in his own valet's pocket, having fallen there during a clothes cleaning, but this belated discovery only worsened his shame. He had wrongfully accused a princess of royal blood, and this monumental error risked costing him his social position. In the small private salon where she had been led, Celeste sat in a blue velvet armchair, still wearing her torn servant's dress. Count Maximilian and the Duke of Saintonge surrounded her with new deference, waiting for her to find the strength to explain. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to gather her thoughts, conscious that her life had just irreversibly shifted. "Your Highness," began the Duke of Saintonge respectfully, "if you permit me this question. How did a princess of the Bourbons find herself as a servant in this castle?" Celeste raised eyes, still moist with tears, to him. "I am not a princess, my lord. At least, I have never lived as one. My story is that of a family secret that my adoptive mother took to her grave." She took a deep breath before continuing. "My biological mother was Marie-Thérèse de Bourbon, natural daughter of the late King Charles II. When the Revolution of 1830 drove the royal family from France, she was pregnant with me. Knowing that her life and mine were in danger, she entrusted my upbringing to one of her faithful followers, Madame Moreau, making her promise to hide my identity forever." The Count and Duke exchanged a stupefied look. Celeste's story revealed the existence of a hidden branch of the royal family, a state secret that had considerable political implications. "My biological mother died in childbirth," continued Celeste. "Madame Moreau raised me as her own daughter, far from Paris, in a small Normandy village. She only revealed the truth about my origins when she died 5 years ago, showing me this mark and making me swear never to reveal it." "But how did you come to be here, in the Count's service?" asked the Duke of Saintonge. "When Madame Moreau died, I found myself alone and without resources. I heard that Belmont Castle was looking for a lady's maid. I applied under the name Celeste Moreau, hiding my true origins. I had the necessary education thanks to what my adoptive mother had given me, but I deliberately passed myself off as a simple orphan." Count Maximilian, who had listened in silence, stood and began pacing the room. "Your Highness, forgive me. I have difficulty adapting to this extraordinary situation. Do you know what your existence means for France?" Celeste shook her head. "I ask nothing of anyone, my lord. I simply wanted to live quietly, away from political intrigues and the dangers that cost my family their lives." "But you are the legitimate heir," exclaimed the Duke of Saintonge. "With the death of the Count of Chambord last year, the elder branch of the Bourbon became extinct. Your existence changes everything. You could claim the throne of France." "I do not want the throne," replied Celeste firmly. "I am only a servant who has learned to be happy in simplicity. Greatness and power do not attract me." This declaration left both men perplexed. They had before them a woman who potentially possessed France's most prestigious rights, and who refused them by personal choice. "Your Highness," said Count Maximilian softly, "whether you want it or not, your secret is now known. There were more than 50 people in that salon tonight. Despite their supposed discretion, the news will spread like wildfire. You can never again become a simple servant." Celeste closed her eyes, understanding the truth of these words. Her peaceful and anonymous life was over. What will become of me then? "You will remain here, under my protection," declared the Count with determination. "As an honored guest, naturally. I cannot permit a person of your rank to continue living as a domestic in my residence. But the other servants, my friends, they will see me differently now, and tonight's guests. Tonight's guests have just understood that they had unknowingly rubbed shoulders with a princess for years. Many will feel honored, others embarrassed by their ignorance. As for Viscount Montclair—" The Count did not finish his sentence, but his severe expression suggested the contempt he felt for the man who had dared lay hands on a princess. At that moment, there was a discreet knock at the door. The butler entered with deference. "My Lord Count," he announced, "several guests request to present their respects to Her Highness. The Duke of Orléans also wishes to speak with you privately about an urgent matter." The Duke of Orléans, the current pretender to the throne of France, present tonight at the ball. His request for an interview took on particular significance in these circumstances. "Have the Duke of Orléans wait a few minutes," said the Count, "and inform the other guests that Her Highness will receive them tomorrow, once she has had time to recover from these events." After the butler's departure, the Count turned to Celeste. "Your Highness, you must understand that your revelation will have major political consequences. The Duke of Orléans will certainly seek to negotiate with you, as your existence calls into question his own claims to the throne." "I told you," repeated Celeste wearily. "I do not want the throne. I renounce all my rights." "It is not that simple," intervened the Duke of Saintonge. "In monarchical law, one cannot simply renounce one's birthrights. They exist de facto, whether you claim them or not." Celeste suddenly realized the extent of the upheaval her revelation would engender. Not only was her personal life transformed, but she risked becoming, despite herself, a major political stake for France. "There is something else," added Count Maximilian, approaching her. "Now that your identity is known, you will become a target. There are many enemies of the monarchy in France who would not tolerate the existence of a legitimate heir. Your security will become a constant concern." This prospect frightened Celeste more than all the rest. She, who had lived in protective anonymity, would now live under the permanent threat of those who would want to eliminate her for political reasons. "What should I do?" she murmured, suddenly feeling very alone, faced with the enormity of the situation. The Count knelt before her armchair, a gesture of touching humility from a man of his rank. "Allow me to protect you, Your Highness. Accept my hospitality and my guard. Together we will find a solution to this situation." In his eyes, Celeste read something more than simple respect due to her rank. There was tenderness, protection, and perhaps even the beginnings of a deeper feeling. Chapter 3. The Consequences of a Revelation. The days following the revelation transformed Belmont Castle into a veritable nerve center of French political activity. Messengers arrived at all hours, bearing sealed letters and urgent messages. The kingdom's most influential personalities solicited audiences with Celeste, now recognized as Her Royal Highness, Princess Celeste de Bourbon. The young woman had been installed in the castle's honor suite, her former servant's clothes replaced by dresses worthy of her rank. But despite this recovered luxury, she felt like a gilded prisoner of her new condition. Every outing required an escort, every meal was served according to rigid protocol, and she could no longer go to the kitchens to chat with her former domestic colleagues. Count Maximilian had become her devoted protector and guide in this new existence. He helped her navigate the complexities of aristocratic etiquette that she had forgotten, explained to her the political stakes of each visit, and above all, brought her moral comfort in this period of upheaval. Between them had developed a particular complicity. Maximilian admired the humility and wisdom of this woman who refused power, while Celeste appreciated the sincerity and benevolent protection of this man who could have exploited her situation for personal political gains. That morning, they were in the castle library when the butler announced the arrival of a distinguished visitor, Monsieur Adolphe Thiers, influential statesman and former president of the council. "Your Highness," said Thiers, bowing deeply before Celeste, "it is an immense honor to be able to meet you. Your existence changes our country's political game." "Monsieur Thiers," replied Celeste with the grace she was beginning to master, "I hope you understand my position. I do not wish to interfere in France's political affairs." The statesman smiled finely. "Your Highness, with all the respect I owe you, your mere existence is already a political act. The news of your revelation has spread throughout Paris. The newspapers speak of you, political circles debate your rights, and the French people are beginning to question the monarchy's future." He took several newspapers from his bag and spread them on the table. "Look at these headlines: The Rediscovered Princess, The Hidden Heir of the Bourbons, The Secret of Belmont Castle. You have become, whether you want it or not, one of France's most important personalities. Celeste looked through the newspapers with dismay. Her photograph, taken without her knowledge during a walk in the castle park, adorned several front pages. Her story, romanticized and distorted, was spread across the first page. How did they obtain this information? She asked, troubled. Among the Count's ball guests, explained Thiers, some could not keep silent. Your secret, Your Highness, is no longer one. Count Maximilian intervened, visibly annoyed. Monsieur Thiers, what exactly do you expect from Her Highness? A public declaration. Monsieur le Comte, the country needs to know what the princess's intentions are. Will she claim her rights? Will she support a monarchical restoration? Or will she make her renunciation official? And if I choose this last option? Asked Celeste. Then this renunciation must be legal, official, and recognized by all concerned parties. This includes the Duke of Orléans, the Legitimists, and even the current Republican authorities. At that moment, a new visitor was announced, the Duke of Orléans himself, accompanied by his legal advisor. The atmosphere immediately tensed. The two pretenders to the throne of France were going to meet for the first time. The Duke of Orléans was a 50-year-old man with noble bearing and piercing gaze. He bowed before Celeste with respect mixed with circumspection. Your Highness, he said, allow me to present my respects and express my astonishment at your revelation. My Lord Duke, replied Celeste diplomatically, I understand that my situation may concern you. Indeed. You see, I have devoted my life to preparing a possible restoration of the monarchy in France. My lineage, my rights, my political alliances, all this finds itself called into question by your existence. The Duke's legal advisor took out a thick file. Your Highness, we have studied the question of your legitimacy. Although you are indeed of royal blood, your mother was a natural daughter. This considerably complicates your succession rights. Think again, intervened the Duke of Saintonge, who had just arrived. I have conducted my own research in the royal archives. Marie-Thérèse de Bourbon was legitimized by her father, King Charles VI, shortly before his death. This legitimization gave her, as well as her descendants, all the rights of a legitimate daughter. This revelation had the effect of a bomb in the room. The Duke of Orléans paled, understanding that Celeste's rights were more solid than he had hoped. Even if this is true, he said after a moment of reflection, the princess has lived her entire life as a commoner. Will the French people accept a queen who has been a servant? The French people will admire a queen who knows their sufferings, replied Count Maximilian firmly. A queen who has lived among them, who understands their needs. Celeste, who had listened to this exchange without saying a word, suddenly stood up. My lords, I beg you to cease this discussion. You speak of me as a political stake, but I am first and foremost a woman who wants to live in peace. She went to the window and contemplated the castle park. I have made my decision. I will make my renunciation of all my rights to the throne of France official. I will sign all necessary documents. Your Highness, said the Count softly, approaching her, are you certain of your choice? Once this renunciation is signed, it will be impossible to go back. Celeste turned to him, and in her eyes he saw peaceful determination. Maximilian, I have found my happiness in simplicity. The 4 years I spent as a servant in your castle have been the happiest of my life. I do not want to exchange this peace for a throne and its intrigues. But if you renounce, insisted Thiers, what will become of you? You can no longer become a servant again. Celeste smiled for the first time in several days. I will become what destiny wills. Perhaps a lady's companion, perhaps a governess, or perhaps... She cast a meaningful glance toward Count Maximilian. Perhaps the wife of a good man who will accept me for what I truly am, and not for my supposed royal rights." The Count felt his heart beat faster. In these few words, Celeste had just made him understand that she shared the feelings he had developed for her. The Duke of Orléans, relieved by this decision, bowed deeply. "Your Highness, your wisdom commands admiration. If you officially confirm this renunciation, you will have my eternal gratitude and my protection." "And I," added Thiers, "undertake to ensure that this renunciation is recognized by all French political instances." But just as everything seemed to be resolving peacefully, a gunshot rang out in the castle courtyard, followed by cries and stampedes. Everyone rushed to the window to discover armed men who had invaded the property. "Radical Republicans!" exclaimed a guard who came running. "They come to arrest the princess. They say no Bourbon must survive in France." The situation had just dramatically shifted. Celeste's identity revelation had not only attracted monarchists, but also their most ardent enemies. Chapter 4. Love Stronger Than Blood. The situation at Belmont Castle had become critical. The radical Republicans, led by one Lucien Moreau, a former revolutionary of 1848, had surrounded the property with about 30 armed men. Their message was clear. They would not leave without having arrested the illegitimate heir of the Bourbon tyrants. In the library, the atmosphere was tense. The Duke of Orléans and his men had retreated with the other guests, while the Count's guards tried to organize the castle's defense. Celeste, at the center of this turmoil she had never wanted, maintained remarkable calm. "Your Highness," Anna said, the Duke of Orléans, "my men can escort you to a secret exit. A carriage awaits you in the north stables." "No," replied Celeste firmly. "I will not flee while endangering all those who protect me. These men are here because of me. It is up to me to resolve this situation." Count Maximilian approached her, worried. "Celeste, this is madness. These Republicans will not negotiate. They want your death." "Perhaps," she said with a sad smile, "but if I die today, at least it will be as Celeste Moreau, the woman I chose to be, and not as a princess I never wanted to be." At that moment, a man entered the library, the butler, accompanied by an individual in work clothes with brusque manners. It was Lucien Moreau, the leader of the Republicans. "So here is the so-called princess," he said, staring at Celeste with contempt. "You don't look like the portraits from Versailles." "Sir," replied Celeste with dignity, "I claim nothing. I intend to officially renounce all my rights." Moreau burst into bitter laughter. "Renounce? As if one could renounce one's blood. You carry the genes of the French people's oppressors. Your very existence is a threat to the Republic." "Listen to me," said Celeste, advancing toward him, ignoring the Count's protests. "I understand your anger. For centuries my family ruled France, sometimes with wisdom, often with injustice. But I have lived as you have. I have been a servant. I have known fatigue, modesty, fear of tomorrow. I am not your enemy." "Lies!" roared Moreau. "You have lived in the luxury of this castle." "In the kitchens, yes. In a maid's room under the eaves. I got up at 5 o'clock to light the fires. I washed the floors on my knees. I mended clothes until late at night." Celeste rolled up her sleeve, showing her hands with short nails and slightly calloused palms. "Look at my hands, sir. Are these the hands of an idle princess?" Moreau hesitated, destabilized by this unexpected sincerity. "You want to kill all the Bourbons?" continued Celeste. "Then kill me, but know that you will kill a woman who has lived like the people, who has served humbly, and who asked only to continue this simple life." "Celeste, no!" cried the Count, rushing toward her. This protective gesture did not escape Moreau. "Ah, the noble Count defends his protégé. There is aristocracy's hypocrisy." "No," said Celeste softly. "He defends the woman he loves, and whom I love in return." This unexpected declaration froze the assembly. The Count looked at her with stupefaction and emotion. "Yes, Maximilian," she continued, turning to him. "I love you for the man you are, not for your title, as you loved me when you thought me a simple servant." "Celeste," murmured the Count, deeply moved. Moreau observed this scene with a changing expression. "You really love him? This isn't a political calculation?" "What calculation?" replied Celeste. "I lived 4 years in this castle. The Count never disrespected me, never made improper advances. He treated me with the same courtesy as his guests. It was this nobility of soul that touched me, not his rank." She turned to the assembly. "My lords, I have a proposition for you. I renounce publicly and definitively all my rights to the throne of France. In exchange, I ask permission to marry the man I love and to live as a simple countess, far from all political intrigue." "And if we refuse?" asked Moreau. "Then kill me," she said simply, "but know that you will kill the last Bourbon who lived like the people." The silence that followed was long and heavy. Then, to everyone's surprise, Moreau lowered his weapon. "You are brave," he admitted, "and perhaps sincere. But how can we be sure you won't go back on this renunciation?" "Because it will be carved in stone," intervened Thiers, "a notarized act, signed before witnesses and published in all the newspapers of France." "And because," added Celeste, "I will take my husband's name, I will no longer be a Bourbon, but a Beaumont." The Count approached her and took her hands in his. "Celeste, are you certain? You renounce a kingdom for a man." "I renounce a burden for happiness," she corrected. "Maximilian, will you marry me? Not the Princess de Bourbon, but Celeste, the woman who shared your residence for 4 years." "With all my heart," he replied, kneeling before her. "Princess or servant, you are the woman I love." Moreau definitively put away his weapon. "If you keep your word, we will keep ours. But beware if this renunciation is just a ruse." 3 months later, the marriage of Count Maximilian de Beaumont to Celeste Moreau was celebrated in the castle's small chapel. Celeste's act of renunciation had been published and recognized by all French political instances, definitively ending her royal pretensions. The Duke of Orléans, who had become the sole legitimate pretender to the throne, had attended the ceremony with benevolence. In his speech, he had saluted the courageous choice of a woman who preferred love to power. Celeste, radiant in her simple but elegant wedding dress, had regained the serenity she had lost during that famous October evening. In exchanging her vows with Maximilian, she knew she had made the right choice. After the ceremony, as they walked in the castle park, Maximilian asked her, "Do you sometimes regret having renounced the crown of France?" Celeste smiled, looking at the mark on her arm, now a symbol not of royalty, but of a personal history overcome. "This mark brought me more misfortunes than happiness, but it also led me to you. How could I regret?" Viscount de Montclair, whose impulsive gesture had triggered this entire story, had withdrawn from social life, consumed by shame at having accused a princess. But Celeste had sent him a letter of forgiveness, for without his error, she would never have found true love. Thus ended the story of the last princess of the Bourbons, who chose love over power, and discovered that true nobility did not reside in royal blood, but in the capacity to love and be loved for what one truly is.